and billions of years, the magic wand of time is broken up. For example, frog plus princess plus kiss equals prince. Well, that's a fairy tale. But frog plus millions and millions of years equals prince. That's the theory of evolution. I don't believe that. I believe frogs make frogs. And prince came from humans, okay? That's my belief on that. Okay. Fossils. Let's really look at the fossils. Often evolutionists say fossilization is rare. Is it? There's trillions of fossils out there. There should be billions of fossils to support the theory of evolution. Okay. Now, I made this color-coded. Okay. Single-celled organisms are supposedly the ancestor to invertebrates. There are billions of fossils of single-celled organisms. There are billions of fossils of invertebrates. Here it says transitional forms. 0. Okay? Billions of fossils of invertebrates, supposedly they're the ancestors to vertebrates. The transitional forms? None. Why is that? Someone might say fossilization is rare. I would conclude they never existed. Once again, there should be billions of living organisms to support the theory of evolution. There should be billions of fossils. Where are they? I would change my mind too if I saw the evidence, but I don't see the evidence for that. Okay, he said engineering is all about simplicity. Well, I am an engineer. It's about functionality. My boss is here tonight. I said, hey, I designed it. It's really simple. What does he care about? Does it work? The human body works. 75 trillion cells cranking out 100,000 chemical reactions per second. That's functionality. That's engineering. Okay? 11 body systems working together. That's engineering. That's functionality too. Okay? Quotes from evolutionists on fossils. In no single documented case is it possible to trace a transition species by species from one genus to another. Many other quotes like that. We go on and on. They admit amongst themselves the lack of fossil evidence. Okay, he directed you to websites, that's fine, but I think evidence should be presented here for our cases. He brought up a common claim. There's certain bats that live in dark caves and they lose their eyesight. Evolutionists say, see, that's evolution. Once again, no, that's extinction. That's loss of a function. The evolutionist has to show not how they lost their eyesight. The evolutionist has to show what? How they got their eyesight. You follow me? If you live in a dark cave and your offspring are blind, it doesn't matter. They could pass that gene on. If they need it, they'll go extinct. The blind ones won't survive. Once again, that's natural selection. How did they get their eyesight? And how did a bat get sonar? Sonar and echolocation, that's another good question right there. Okay, let's talk about DNA. Very, very good point. Very common point. People say, hey, all living things have DNA. They say that's good evidence for the theory of evolution. And then they'll say we have more in common with an ape than bacteria. All of these organisms are made up of cells. These are the ones that reproduce by meiosis. So now bacteria is less common than the others. These are all vertebrates. So the list is getting more narrow. These have 4 limbs. These give birth to live young. And humans are the only ones who do open heart surgery and drive-by shootings. My point, do humans have more in common with apes than they do bacteria?
Yes.
Would you predict that our DNA would be more common to an ape than bacteria?
Yes.
I would. DNA makes proteins. Proteins are the machines that keep you alive. I would predict the same thing. But are the differences close enough to assume we're related? That's what you have to decide. The evidence says we are more common with the chimp than bacteria. I would say you would expect that. Think. You eat bananas. Monkeys eat bananas. You need proteins to digest bananas. You have hair. Monkeys have hair. That requires proteins as well. But still, very important. Modern science in biochemistry says the difference is now up to 5% as they trace the chimp genome. But suppose we are 5% different than an ape. Your DNA is like a word that's got 3.2 billion letters to it. That's a long word. That's the genome, okay? 3.2 billion base pairs. What's 5% of 3.2 billion? 160 million. You are not 1 or 2 mutations away from an A. That's a tremendous difference. Yes, you are more similar, but the differences are still overwhelming. He talked about retroviruses. I have a slide on that. A retrovirus is like this. They look at the human genome. They look at similar parts of a chimp genome and say, hey, the same mutation is in the same place. That's good data. There's 2 possible conclusions. Many evolutionists would say, hey, that means we're related to each other. Well, there's biochemists who said no. There are insertion points on the genome where we could both acquire this virus. You follow me? The fact is, there's the mutation or the retrovirus at the same spot. 2 different possibilities. To me, it doesn't show ancestry, common ancestry at all. And she's a PhD in molecular genetics. Once again, he talked about matter and energy being produced from nothing. I'd love to hear that. I would be very interested in that. And I never once said the Big Bang. I talked about the origin of matter and energy. I know this happens all the time. I ask someone, how did the universe originate? They might say the Big Bang. No, I didn't ask you how you think matter and energy expanded. I asked you what? How it originated. So I never did say that. And often people will say, hey, in a local system, entropy can increase. Well, my system is the whole universe, and universally, entropy is increasing, the universe is going downhill, and so the question is, how did all that good energy get here in the first place? An atheist won't answer that. But good, available energy is running out universe-wide. How did the ball get to the top of the hill? It can't get there by natural processes. Thank you.
I'm going to be cheating a little bit on this one. I do have a book in front of me, as you can tell. Just to cover a couple of things, because again, I'm not a biology major, and there's a lot to memorize in biology, so even if you were, I don't know if you would know all of this. But he talks about there are no fossils between invertebrates and vertebrates. This is one of the books, actually, on the sheets that they handed out. I thought we were going to do book references, but I guess we didn't. But if anyone is interested, again, this is called the Counter-Creationism Handbook. Basically, it just has about 450 arguments, and then it just goes through and has citations for all the answers that it gives. So, fossils between vertebrates and vertebrates. Picaya, an early invertebrate chordate. Uninosin, an early chordate. These are very difficult to pronounce, I apologize. Hycoella, chordate similar to Uninosin. Cothyamurus diadexis, the oldest known chordate, 535 million years old. I'm not even going to try those last 2. So there was 6, and this is just, again, a brief reference, and they give citations if you want, you can look up more. So the claim that there's no fossils between invertebrates and vertebrates, I don't know. Bill's a nice guy. I don't think he's lying. I just think that for whatever reason he's missed it, or he's been given bad information. He also talks about, a snail, 2 snails were, he mentioned the 405 reference, and he said if 2 snails, were separated by a freeway, I didn't mention 405, I apologize, they would still be snails. Well, that's because of our classification system. When 2 species separate, they separate at the lowest point. So we still classify them as snails just because of our classification system. But they are still, it is still a form of evolution. It is still something we witness all the time. Because we don't classify them as new species, because they branch at the lowest part, that doesn't provide evidence for creation. I know that's, again, a common claim that dogs produce dogs, blah, 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 blah. Well, if they branch at the lowest part, of course they're still dogs by default. And he talks about, why don't we see this really fast, transition? Why don't we see it? I'm waving a magic wand. If we saw that instant type of creation or the instant type of transformation, that would actually be evidence against evolution. Evolution does not predict that. predicts the exact opposite, gradual